Women inside of the Third Reich were pressurized to become mothers and wives, and many of those who did not want this were sacked from their jobs and were treated poorly. Inside the policies of Nazi Germany, the ideal German woman did not have a career outside of her home. She would be a good wife who cared for her husband and who looked after her children well, raising them in the Nazi beliefs. Many young women were ordered to attend groups such as the League of German Maidens, where they were encouraged to have as many children for the Reich, and they were also brainwashed into this way of thinking. Women also found their opportunities more restricted, and they were not actually allowed to carry out official Nazi Party functions and roles, but there were a few who excelled in their fields, and who did have a significant amount of power and influence within the Reich. This included one woman, who was known as the Female Fuhrer, and a female pilot who was incredibly celebrated, and even offered to fly Hitler out of Berlin on the last flight out of the crumbling city in April 1945. In this video we look at the fates of the top-ranking Nazi women, and what happened to them after the end of World War II. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Women were pivotal to Hitler's plan to create an Aryan race. He wanted German women to have as many racially pure children as they could, to repopulate the Reich with a huge influx of Aryan children. Nazi government policy even encouraged this, and programs such as the Lebensborn stated that every SS member should father 4 children, either in or out of wedlock. Lebensborn homes also provided help and shelter for single mothers, and provided financial support, and then parents were sought for the children for adoption. The Nazis did concentrate on family and marriage more, and encouragements such as tax reliefs and medals were brought in to persuade women to have children. But this all began in school and teenage years, as girls were taught to embrace being a mother and an obedient wife at school, and through the League of German Maidens, a youth group they attended at the age of 10, they remained members of this for years. Specifically, Hitler did not want women in high-profile jobs, and he wanted them at home raising their children. Later they were needed to conduct work, as the movement of the German state towards full mobilisation for war took place. But he removed women from high-profile jobs, barred them from becoming teachers and judges, and restricted the options career-wise that they had. With this, many women were not allowed into prominent positions inside of government, and there was only really one top-ranking woman who was given roles and duties inside of the Nazi Party to fulfill, and this was Gertrud Scholtz-Klink. Gertrud Scholtz-Klink, at the age of 19, married a former World War I veteran who became a member of the Nazi Party. They both attended meetings of the party together, and the couple had 5 children. In March 1930, her husband died at a Nazi rally from a heart attack, and Gertrud Scholtz-Klink began to rise throughout the ranks of the group. She was later awarded the Golden Party badge, but she was appointed the leader of the Nazi women's organisation in Baden. She travelled throughout Germany at this time and gave speeches to large groups of women and girls. When Hitler seized power in 1933, she moved to Berlin and was appointed the leader of the German Women's Labour Service. She was then given other jobs, such as the Reichsführerin of the party's National Socialist Women's League and the German Women's Association. She was also made the head of the Women's League of the German Red Cross and the Women's Bureau of the German Labour Front. With this, she was given the power and oversight of all women inside the Reich practically, and she was regarded to many as the female Führer. To the Nazis, Scholtz-Klink was a model Aryan woman. She was blonde-haired, blue-eyed, slim, and wore little makeup. Even her hairstyle was classic German. She usually wore her uniform of the National Socialist Women's League, and she was known as a Reich Mother-in-Chief. She helped repress feminist groups inside of the Reich, and her main role was to promote the superiority of men, the joys of being at home, and why bearing children was pivotal. She made many speeches and helped introduce the German Mothers' Cross Awards. She was also very much a hypocrite and spoke against women getting involved in politics despite her own status, and she later introduced the idea of a household year of study where they would, after secondary school, be taught all about becoming a mother. She worked closely with head of the SS Heinrich Himmler to ensure that women who married SS members were trained to become perfect wives through the Reich Bride schools. Scholtz-Klink regularly gave speeches, including at the Nuremberg rally. It was said of one of her speeches that 50,000 German women and girls marshalled by hard-bosomed Gertrud Scholtz-Klink, #1 female Nazi, hailed Herr Hitler with bursts of wild ecstatic cheering, which kept up for the whole 45 minutes that he addressed them in his happiest mood. Gertrud Scholtz-Klink was a virulent Nazi and supported the anti-Semitic policies against Jewish people. She regarded them as the mortal enemy of the German nation, and she also was aware of the crimes of the Nazi regime. Her organisations were involved in monitoring forced labourers and in the training and selection of female concentration camp guards. She also regularly visited camps and carried out inspections. In the final days of the Second World War, she was seen wearing a camouflage uniform and even carrying a submachine gun, and was present during the Battle of Berlin. There were false reports in April 1945 that she died by her own hand, but she fled from Berlin before it fell. She destroyed her identity papers and was held inside a Soviet prisoner of war camp. She did manage to escape from this and then went into hiding for a number of years. She even obtained an exonerated status in the denazification proceedings, but later Gertrud Scholtz-Klink was retried and she was said to have been a major offender and was held in prison. She was sentenced to 30 months in a hard labour camp and was banned from engaging in any political activity, and was also deprived of her right to vote. She was also banned for 10 years from teaching and getting involved in journalistic activities. She remained a staunch Nazi for the rest of her life and died in March 1999 at the age of 97. Now, Gertrud Scholtz-Klink may have been the only woman to hold significant power inside of Nazi Germany's government, but there were other women who were recognised inside of the Reich for their work, and that performed high-status jobs for the Nazis. Leni Riefenstahl was a filmmaker and actress, and she was a very successful filmmaker and director before the Nazis came to power. But it was for her work with the Nazis that she is best remembered and known. In the 1930s, she directed the Nazi propaganda film The Triumph of the Will, which showed the Nazis off, and it was a huge sign of Nazi strength and power. She made other films for them too, and even utilised persecuted people who were treated poorly on the film sets, and once the filming was done, these people were then allegedly sent to Auschwitz. She was enthusiastic about her work for the Nazis, and was invited to film the 1936 Summer Olympics, creating the film Olympia. She visited Greece for this and other countries, and it was all funded by the Nazis. Riefenstahl's work was pioneering, and she used different filming techniques which had never been used before. She was close with high-ranking Nazis, including Joseph and Magda Goebbels, and attended parties and went to the opera with them. As the war broke out, Riefenstahl was pictured following the invasion of Poland, wearing a military uniform and carrying a pistol on her belt, being chaperoned by German soldiers. She was acting as a war correspondent and was present in a town when 30 civilians were executed for an attack on German soldiers. She later claimed that she protested about this, but her orders to get rid of the people in the market were allegedly misinterpreted to massacre them. This allegedly caused her a huge amount of distress. Her relationship over time with Hitler did decline, and as the war was being lost for the Germans, she was actually spotted hitchhiking with other men when she was arrested by the Americans. She walked out of a holding camp and was then seized again, but was treated well by the Americans. After the war, Riefenstahl tried to make many more films and programmes, but she was tainted by her work that she did for the Nazis. Many did not want her working in film again, but she persisted and tried to complete other work. She travelled to Africa and wrote books on what she saw, and she lived for a very long time, dying at the age of 101 on the 8th of September 2003. She was buried inside of Munich's Waldfriedhof and is still there today. Another celebrated woman inside of the Reich was Hannah Reich, a female aviator and test pilot who actually was one of the final people to meet Adolf Hitler inside of his bunker. Reich was a skilled flyer, and she was known for her stunts and also skill at handling German aircraft. She test flew some of the most iconic German planes in history and was the first female helicopter pilot. She took part in many air races and tested the Stuka dive bomber, pushing the plane to its limits. She also became the first and only woman to fly a rocket plane, testing the Messerschmitt Me-163 Comet. She was injured on a crash landing in this, spending 5 months in hospital. For the Nazis, Hannah Reich was a powerful propaganda tool. She was a celebrity and had blonde hair and blue eyes, and she appeared in a number of propaganda shoots. She was even awarded the Iron Cross by Hitler for her work. But Reich had a darker side. She was someone incredibly devoted to her Führer, and in 1944 she went to Hitler to present the idea of a new operation which would see young male pilots crash land V-1 rockets into targets, these practically being guided missiles with no way of escaping. She was proposing a German kamikaze unit, and she even test flew many V-1s which had been adapted for this purpose. In the final days of the war, Hitler sacked the chief of the Luftwaffe Hermann Göring and replaced him with Robert Ritter von Greim. So he could meet with Hitler, he and Reich flew into Berlin, and they landed in the city, which was already under attack by the Soviets. They flew a Fieseler Stork aircraft, and Reich managed to be the one who landed the plane, despite von Greim being the one who was flying it, but he did get injured. She was given a vial of cyanide by Hitler and accepted this, but she flew the last plane out of Berlin. Some Soviets tried to shoot down this aircraft, thinking Hitler was in it, but it took off and managed to escape. Reich had offered to take Hitler out of Berlin, but he refused this. She was later captured and was interviewed by the Americans. Reich was a devoted Nazi and claimed about her final flight that it was the blackest day when we could not die at our Führer's side. We should all kneel down in reverence and prayer before the altar of the fatherland. She was held for 18 months in prison, but was then later released. She was barred from flying planes, but she then took to the sky again gliding, and Reich later won bronze at the championships in Spain for gliding, being the first woman to actually fly in this. She continued to break records and was even invited to the White House by President JFK. She later moved to Ghana and established a gliding school, but she changed her views about race. Her final interview was somewhat harrowing though. She said, "And what have we now in Germany? A country of bankers and car makers. Even our great army has gone soft. Soldiers wear beards and question orders. I'm not ashamed to say I believed in National Socialism. I still wear the Iron Cross with diamonds Hitler gave me. But today in all of Germany, you can't find a single person who voted Adolf Hitler in power. Many Germans feel guilty about the war. They don't explain the real guilt we share, that we lost." Hannah Reich died of a heart attack on the 24th of August 1979, and she is buried today inside her family plot in Salzburg. Despite not being in a position of power officially inside the Nazi Party, Magda Goebbels was seen by many as the unofficial First Lady of the Reich. She was the wife of Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda minister, and had a very turbulent relationship with him. He had many affairs, and they had many children, all being given the name H to honour Hitler. Her power and influence came as she was a very close friend of Hitler, and she became his confidant. Hitler even gave the couple relationship advice, but he loved the company of Magda especially, and some claim that Joseph Goebbels was jealous of the dictator. Many women inside of Germany wrote to Magda, and she then answered. She also entertained the wives of foreign heads of state, and was seen comforting war widows. But in private she may have questioned Hitler as the war effort went against the Germans. Magda's worst actions came inside of Hitler's bunker within Berlin. She and her husband decided to poison their own children, and she administered the poison herself after they'd been injected with a sedative. She had contemplated this for some time and rejected offers for them to be evacuated out of Berlin. Magda Goebbels also died in the region of the bunker, in the Reich Chancellery Garden, alongside her husband after Hitler's death, and her body was partially burned. It was then buried inside of a Smersh facility inside of Magdeburg for 25 years, before it was finally dealt with once and for all, being cremated properly in 1970. Another prominent contender to the title of the First Lady of the Third Reich was Emmy Göring, the wife of Hermann Göring, the Reichsmarshal. Emmy was Göring's second wife, and she helped to host huge parties in which foreign dignitaries attended. She was a figure of jealousy by other women, such as Hitler's girlfriend Eva Braun, and the pair did not get on well. She was the wife of one of the richest men in Europe, and lived very lavishly, and benefited greatly from her husband's huge art thefts. She even hosted the Duke of Windsor, formerly Edward VIII, and his wife Wallis Simpson, Edward VIII being of course the abdicated King of Britain. After the end of the war, Emmy Göring was arrested, and she was imprisoned inside of different camps. She was classified as being a Nazi, and was sentenced to 1 year in prison, and had 30% of her property confiscated. She was not able to revive her former acting career, but then spent the rest of her life in a small flat inside of Munich. She died in 1973 at the age of 80, and is also buried inside of Munich's Waldfriedhof. Maria Mandel was a high-ranking female concentration camp guard. She helped to train other female guards such as Irma Grazer and rose throughout the ranks inside of camps such as Auschwitz. She oversaw the women's camp within Auschwitz II-Birkenau, and it was later claimed that she was complicit in the murders of around 500,000 people. She was sentenced to death and was executed inside of Poland, being sent crashing through the gallows, and Mandel was probably the most powerful female camp guard who worked within the system inside the Third Reich. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.